Good evening. Uh, we're doing a sit and talk because the wind was so great and even turned off the electricity a moment before we started talking that you wouldn't hear me. And it was invigorating to walk in it, but not to do what we try to do normally. The chaos that is Trump and the brutality that is Trump are two legs of a third objective, which is to be a monarch unrestrained by the Constitution, the law, or decorum. We're paying a price for it already. For example, a mom brings a gun to school to confront the lesbian teacher and says to her, "Kiss your kids goodbye." This is in Indiana. What is that about? Trump accuses Zelensky of starting a war with Russia. Now, isn't that upside down? Trump at one point said, "I love the ignorant people." And I've mentioned Thomas Jefferson before in that context, who said, "A nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never was and never will be." Now, I don't expect that Trump reads Thomas Jefferson or indeed any of the great writers of our early constitutional revolt against monarchy and extracting ourselves from a colony to being a nation state in the world with certain values. And we have, in fits and starts, moved from an approximation of some of those to greater credibility and devotion to those. The franchise is the best example of it. In the beginning, few had a franchise. Women had no vote. Property owners had a vote. Others, not so. And over time, more and more people got the vote. And yes, this is a republic, not a democracy. But the republic is informed by the people who have the right of the franchise, not just at the ballot box, but the rest of the year. And that's what the First Amendment is for. The First Amendment provides us access to the government. It gives us free speech to criticize them. And when Patrick Henry and others were fighting for a Bill of Rights, that's what they were concerned about. They'd already had taxation without representation. They didn't want that going on anymore. And the First Amendment was a protection against bad policies against the individuals. So we celebrate now when Obama slams Trump's ham-handed crackdown on Harvard University, freezing, I think, $2.2 billion in grants and $60 million in contracts. Because Harvard believes in academic freedom. We should all believe in academic freedom. I'm embarrassed what happened at Columbia, and they should reconsider what they did. Because they're a large enough university. None of the large universities should be on the wrong side of this issue, because it is critical to how they impute to our nation insights in research and analysis and psychology and philosophy. There's no area that is not enriched by having this kind of powerful thinking in the nation. And it is a store against the demands of the future. And so you compromise that now, you compromise all the wealth, intellectual and otherwise, of the nation by attacking. Same thing with students. Are you going to teach students to surrender, to drop the knee to a monarchist, Trump, and his oligarchic pals, who'll be getting rid of as soon as he doesn't need them either? So the question is the center holding? And how do we get to the point where we have a philosophy ourselves to fight and to resist this? Now, in 1969, just a few years ago, I decided I was going to do the continent, okay? I was going to buy a motorcycle in London, and I was going to do the continent and alone, and I was going to put a bedroll on the back of my motorcycle and stay overnight at places as I could afford those when I could. And when I got off the plane at Heathrow, I spent a couple of days, and then I found a place to buy a motorcycle, and I got myself a BSA, and the temperature was good in the city until the day I took that bike out of the showroom, and it was raining, and I dropped the bike. And those bikes weren't made of plastic, so it didn't really affect the bike much. And just before I headed for the White Cliffs of Dover, I went into a bookstore. I went into lots of bookstores and places. And there was an open bin of books. And everybody was reaching in and buying books and so forth. And a short distance away from me on the other side of this big wooden container that had us reaching in, it could have been closed, but they were all books, all used books. And opposite me was Omar Sharif, the actor, and he was in the same bin. Now, part of me, and maybe if it was years later, I would have done it differently. I just thought it wasn't right to take advantage of a man who was single-mindedly looking for a book like I was, and who's so well known. And I don't know what we would have talked about anyhow. I'm sure I would have just been complimenting him. But still, it was kind of cool. And so in that moment, I got a book. I picked it from that same bin, and I still have that book from 1969 to now. And I read it. I put it in my duffel bag on the back of the bike, and I'd take it out, and I'd read it, and I'd do sketches as I moved through Europe. And some places actually gave me meals for the sketches I did. But the book by H.G. Wells was The New Machiavelli. And I read aloud portions of it to others, particularly a set of passages that I think have held true and inspiring ever since I saw this book in 1969. And H.G. Wells, no question, he had an ability to frame things. But The New Machiavelli is about a politico who is emerging and trying to find out who he is. And he says, why shouldn't I take my mind to my uncle and let him know what I think? And they were having enormous problems getting along. We think of the 60s when unless a person was younger than 30, we didn't trust them. And it's one of those years that I thought something was going to happen when I turned 30, and was as pleased nothing special seemed to happen. He says, why shouldn't he tell his mind to his uncle? And he said that their fight, their row, was preposterous, but essential. It was the antagonism between ideas and the established methods, between ideas and the rule of thumb world. The rule that this young person hates, it's because it's the rule of thumb world, the rule of thumb world. The thing I and my kind of people exist for primarily to battle with, to annoy it, to disarrange it, to reconstruct it. We question everything disturbing, anything that cannot give a clear justification to our questioning, because we believe inherently that our sense of disorder implies the possibility of a better order. The other, vaster mass, the uncle, and what we're confronting today, who accept everything for the thing it seems to be, hate inquiry and analysis as a tramp fears to wash. The conflict of what is with the speculative what if. Now, my translation, mental translation, it's all in English, is that if you do not have an inquiring mind and do not go beyond what you're spoon-fed, passively receiving it, you are already a victim of an attack on our republic, on our democracy. We see it every day. Mom brings a gun to school. Fella tries to burn the house of the governor of Pennsylvania. We have a person stuck in a prison who may not come out alive, because we have people who exist in this world of theirs, monarchical, autocratic, dictatorial, unfeeling, unseeing, at least so they pretend. When I was young, I remember them talking about nation states in which people were too casual and would step over bodies in the street? Have we reached that phase ourselves? Is that who we are and what we do? There are those who are comfortable with that, and they can write them off by picturing them a certain way. The interesting thing is to make you see something that you think you can righteously despise. In an all-white culture, is it easier for that all-white segment of our society that hates to be comfortable because somebody is a person of color, maybe brown or yellow? They have certain views and feelings and so forth. So this is our challenge. We have to take the world as we see it, reject the rule of thumb world, apply our thinking to it. There's an invitation out there every day when you have Sanders wandering the country, drawing large crowds to make them think, young and old, about these issues. That is where we should stand. We should stand with those who would reconstruct the nation that is being destroyed bit by ugly bit, dystopically hateful, and by Trump, a person who has no dignity, who has no right or justice to be in the White House. Oh yeah, if you can run for office and lie about everything and people believe you, then you can get elected. Terrific. And could there be any other dirty tricks? Who knows? But a country that does not see the issues as they exist, does not question them, does not feel them, does not protect their neighbor, becomes the person who in the end is treated as badly as the first person that was silently and passively ignored as they suffered. And so then we suffer. You may make a joke, as some do, about what Trump's doing. Oh, that's so silly. He'll never do that. Who believed that? And so forth. This superiority is the mixture of bad thinking that gets us into trouble. And it already has. I felt very strongly for Biden, but he was wrong that he could settle this matter in the ballot box. And maybe he should have been able to do that, but that was a horrible miscalculation to have an attorney general who did nothing. And here we have a guy who's a multiple felon, breaking every law, breaking every ritual, breaking everything that matters in a nation that prescribed itself as land of the free and the home of the brave. We're not brave enough to fight for our freedom, so then we're not free enough to be brave. So that's a couple of thoughts I had today, and tomorrow, if it's not windy, I'll be out there talking. So all the best. Bye-bye.